In the sun-drenched lobby of Prestige Plaza, one of the capital's leading business centers, a stream of elegantly dressed professionals, both men and women, purposefully headed for the elevators, their polished shoes tapping rhythmically on the marble floor. Oliver stood apart in this steady corporate flow. Although the years had marked the faint wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, he still had an impressive figure, lean, collected, and undoubtedly outstanding. As the financial director of a powerful holding company, he exuded a calm authority that turned heads without demanding attention. Time had streaked his once jet-black hair with a refined silver sheen, but his eyes retained the same steely calm that reassured investors and unsettled rivals. This company had been his life's work. He'd nurtured it from a modest investment outfit into a sprawling financial powerhouse. For more than a decade now, since crossing into his 40s, Oliver had risen before dawn, arriving at the office long before most of his peers had even brewed their first cup of coffee. Every deal that crossed his desk was dissected meticulously before earning his signature. No report escaped the scrutiny of his trained eye. No merger, acquisition, or labyrinthine operation proceeded without his informed blessing. Over the years, he had built a reputation for being utterly uncompromising, a man who demanded precision, despised vagueness, and didn't suffer disorganization lightly. Under his watchful eye operated the firm's colossal financial machinery, a vast accounting division managing assets that reached across commercial real estate, heavy industry, and cutting-edge startups. He kept tabs on everything, and yet lately, especially in recent weeks, a strange unease had begun gnawing at him. On paper, things couldn't have looked better. The holding was expanding, projects grew bolder, profits climbed steadily, but something felt off. More and more often, he caught fleeting expressions of doubt or thinly veiled curiosity in the faces of colleagues and long-standing partners, as if they saw only the outer man, not the force he once was. The feeling that a quiet game was being played behind his back began to settle like a fog in his mind. Coincidence or not, this creeping suspicion reflected subtle changes in the family. His wife, Lillian, became estranged from him, and even their adult children seemed to communicate more with Richard, the chairman of the board, than with him. Lansky, slightly older and a veteran of both governmental corridors and high-stakes private boardrooms, had been the one to bring Oliver into the fold all those years ago. In the beginning, they'd worked well together. Lansky appreciated Oliver's cool head in volatile situations, while Oliver, in turn, respected Lansky's drive and uncanny ability to steer through murky financial waters. But with time, that camaraderie faded. As the holding company expanded, Lansky grew more insular. He stopped sharing his broader strategies, choosing instead to make decisions within a tight inner circle. Officially, Oliver still reviewed every critical document and signed off on major moves. But increasingly, he found odd entries, curious line items, details that didn't add up. By the time he noticed the anomalies and requested clarification, the deals in question were often abruptly postponed or stopped altogether. Then, out of the blue, Onyx Capital acquired a substantial block of shares secretly, at favorable prices through many intermediaries. That's why Oliver had made a habit of arriving before sunrise. The early hours gave him a chance to double-check the numbers, trace the outlines of transactions before they were obscured. And though he couldn't yet name it, he felt something brewing, something calculated. A scheme, perhaps. But he still lacked the one thing he needed most: proof. Polite conversations with Richard became more and more formal, and their once friendly dinners had long since turned into gala evenings with invited bankers and politicians. Even Lansky's trademark caustic humor, known at social events, has acquired a touch of mockery, almost contempt. What tormented Oliver most, though, was that Lillian had clearly taken Lansky's side, blossoming overnight into a revered figure in high society, the queen of philanthropy. She hosted lavish receptions nearly every other evening, raising funds for church restorations, orphanages, and programs supporting gifted young musicians. It's admirable work, Oliver would tell himself, but why is Lansky always at her side in the photos? Never me. Their children, once respectful of Oliver's firm but fair guidance, seemed now to drift away. He had poured himself into their upbringing, hiring the best tutors, paying for elite courses, and yet their choices now struck him as subtly unsettling. His eldest son Daniel, who once dreamed of a career in government, abruptly changed his line of work, taking up a position in one of the subsidiaries, on Lansky's personal recommendation. The middle son, Paul, a second-year student at an international elite institute, appeared in a family group chat, mainly to share stories about meeting Lansky's most promising business partners. Irene, who once dreamed of becoming a screenwriter, switched to journalism. But lately she has been spending more and more time at events organized by the Lillian Charitable Foundation, always under the patronage of Lansky. The irony stung. The children had immersed themselves in his world of high finance, yet he felt like an outsider peering in from the cold. That autumn, his estrangement from the family deepened. In the grand mansion where he and Lillian had lived for years, conversations became sparse, sterile. Small talk bloomed where intimacy once lived, and Oliver found himself unable to reciprocate the polite disinterest. Even the staff, cooks, tutors, drivers, seemed to follow only Lillian's instructions now, as if the balance of power had quietly shifted. Lillian, once warm and attentive, stopped asking about his work. The paperwork arrived on Oliver's desk, 300 pages thick, contracts, mutual obligations, guarantees, and collateral. As always, he combed through every clause. But something about this deal felt off. There were subtle, almost imperceptible irregularities, additional agreements whose true purpose seemed deliberately obfuscated. That evening, when Lillian informed him she had another engagement with influential ladies and wouldn't be coming home, Oliver retreated to his home office, the walls lined with diplomas and certificates celebrating his contributions to the economy seemed suddenly hollow. He brewed tea, spread out the documents, and immersed himself in the fine print. The muffled steps of the night guard passed in the hallway. With methodical precision, Oliver marked dubious clauses and scribbled inconsistencies in a notebook. A troubling pattern emerged. Vague provisions that enabled funds to be funneled into foreign accounts under the guise of consulting services and information support. It smelled of money laundering, of gray schemes and offshore trickery. His instincts whispered, "This isn't oversight. This is design." By dawn, the mansion was still. Lillian hadn't returned. Oliver wandered into the family room and stood before a portrait, the four of them frozen in happier days. Lillian in a vivid dress, the children smiling, and himself proud and steady. How many years had passed since that photo was taken? Had everything really unraveled? If his suspicions were correct, then the betrayal wasn't just financial. It ran deeper. It meant his wife and children had quietly aligned themselves with Lansky, and that Oliver, after years of service and sacrifice, had become little more than a mask to cover someone else's deception. Oliver couldn't ignore the truth anymore. He hired a private investigator who uncovered a network of offshore companies and shell companies through which Lansky was withdrawing company money, hiding behind Lillian's charitable foundations. The evidence was overwhelming. Fake contracts, secret transfers, even forged signatures. "We need to talk," she said, her voice unnaturally low. Oliver put down the papers. He already guessed what was going to be discussed, but he nodded anyway. "I know you've uncovered Lansky's scheme," she began, avoiding his gaze. "But that's not all." A pause hung in the air, thick as smoke. "I cheated on you with Richard for years." Oliver felt his heart constrict, but his face remained stony. "Children," he began, but Lillian abruptly interrupted. "They're not yours." Silence. "Daniel and Paul, Richard is their father. Irene is yours, but she's the only one." Oliver got up slowly and went to the window. The lights of the city twinkled behind the glass, the one he had once considered his own. "Why now? What is it?" he asked without turning around. "Because you would have found out anyway. And because," her voice cracked, "I'm tired of lying." He nodded, clenching his fists. "Go away." Lillian didn't beg. She just turned around and walked out, leaving the door open. The final, Oliver was left alone. But now he had no doubts. He severed all ties and then sold his share and left. He no longer believed in families built on lies and partners hiding daggers behind smiles. But he believed in numbers. They never betrayed.